Good day, everyone. Well, we're seeing a continuation of this sideways market, but that said, the NASDAQ is kissing distance from an all-time high of 5132. And the question is this going to, the sideways market going to persist for a bit longer? Are we going to break to the upside and then fizzle out? All these questions are in investors' minds. The thing is that one camp sees QE as continuing because the global situation is not all well, belying the economic reports that seem to indicate things are turning the corner. A lot of those reports are suspect. I don't think there's enough evidence, and the Fed may not get enough evidence for many months, maybe well into 2016. In which case the market may remain in this kind of quagmire. On the other hand, if the economy is truly turning the corner, then what we may see is some form of taper tantrum, because historically we have seen markets correct by more than 10%, typically at least a few months or 6 to 9 months ahead of the first rate hike. So that is the question then as to whether, which scenario is going to play out. The first rate hike, historically speaking, is actually a bullish event. But again, markets may have already corrected if they're going to do so before that first rate hike. Now, I wanted to go over a few names here. Let's see. Let's type in, let's start with REGN. Let's see, it's not giving me the box.
Sorry, that's me hitting the keyboard there, Dr. K.
Okay, I'm just trying to get REGN, but it's not giving me the box.
Go ahead.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Okay, we're good. So this is a name that we put on the list over a month ago, May 8th, right in there, and as you can see, the stock made some progress, and then it broke out of that little sideways pattern, and then the next day it's retracing. So on a day like yesterday where it's gapping down and the volume is heavy, you want to be out of the stock, no questions asked. I mean, presumably you bought it down in here, so even if you sold it yesterday, you'd still be in the money on it. It's also very possible that some of you may have taken some profits as the stock started to come out of this formation in here. Then your money was dead as it was just going sideways. But always always sell the position in its entirety if you get a situation where the stock is gapping down and it's not due to something benign like a secondary. Another stock is the AMBA. We've had questions about, is this a climax top? Certainly. This is a stock that's done very well for anyone who bought it when we sent out the reports on the 14th of May. And you can see here that there's a lot of volume coming into the stock when it undergoes this run here. And with this very high volume day 2 days ago is an event where you're going to want to take some profits off the table, because that does have, it's not a traditional climax top. It doesn't meet my definition of climax top, but it is a, shall we say, a intermediate climax of some sort. So taking profits 2 days ago, nothing wrong with that. Now it's retracing constructively, so maybe you still have half your position left or some of it left, and then we can see what happens from here. If this stock is going to continue higher, it's probably going to issue some sort of pocket pivot in the days ahead. Third stock is AYI, and this is a stock that we put on the list on the 29th of, where are we here? 29th of April. So right there. As you can see, the stock definitely got ahead of itself on this day. Big volume in a mid-bar close. That's not the strongest kind of action you want to see, especially when it gets ahead of itself. So on that day, taking profits partially or it's in its entirety, there's nothing wrong with that. As you can see here, the stock has really made no progress since then. Then we've got our favorite SKX. that had a Bible gap up on the 23rd of April when we sent out the report on it, and since then it's moved in a very tightly constructive pattern. So here's a situation where you may actually still have your whole position, because every time it seems like it's going to get ahead of itself, it then retraces constructively, and it seems to be doing that. But that said, keep your stops very tight on this because you want to keep your profits, presumably, if you bought it in the mid to low 80s, back on the 29th of April, rather 23rd of April. Then we've got VRX. Here's the one we put on the 29th of April here, and as you can see, it's made a nice move. Again, here it's getting a bit ahead of itself, but it's a bit subtle. So if if you're the type of trader who likes to sell in strength, that would have been an optimal day. If you like to sell in weakness, then it's as you can see, it's flagging here, and it even violates the 10-day moving average. So that's a situation where you might want to be taking your profits in a name like that. Then we've got CI, which we put on the list on the 22nd of May. Yeah, that day there. And this is a stock that is pretty slow stock. I mean, relative to the move it made on this day. Clearly, there's something going on. I don't know if there was a news event on it or something. And then on this day, when it finally starts to retrace, nothing wrong with taking some profits because you know it's probably going to have to back and fill, which it is doing right now. And finally, we've got SUPN, which was added on May 21st. So it had a subtle pocket pivot right in there, and then it breaks out, which is also a pocket pivot, and it has been on the rise in a linear fashion. It's looking pretty good. Yesterday, it had a mid-bar close on high volume, so there's nothing wrong with taking profits, some of your profits yesterday, because that's a little bit, if the stock's made a good move, and you want to be, again, taking profits when you have them in context of the chart. If you have any, say, happy position left, then there's nothing wrong with sitting to see where the stock's going to go from here. But so far, it's looking pretty good. Now, oils have potentially, and commodities too. Let's look at the USO chart. This is one you can use a bunch of these different charts. This is the one I use, and you can see that it's making a double bottom of some sort, and that could be a significant low right there that it's put in. It's trying to come out of this little handle now. Commodities are looking very similar in their patterns, and so this could be telegraphing that the global economy is indeed starting to pick up. The second piece of evidence is the TLT, which is telegraphing to us that interest rates are on the rise. You can see that here with this formation. This is the price of the 20-year. So as the price falls, yields move higher. So this is a potential forecast mechanism for what the economy actually might be doing in the future, which is possibly optimistic. In other words, higher rates indicate recovering economy as well as does higher commodity and prices and, of course, oil. All bode well for a global economy that might actually be turning the corner. But again, it still remains to be seen. We've had a lot of these false situations in the past where everything starts to look better and then it's not. So we need more clear evidence. But in the meantime, let's continue to take action on stocks that do present themselves. And with that, I will turn it over to Gil.
Let's see. I think my favorite stock today is Mobileye, which is breaking out. I think stock was viable on the pullback in here. We really like this name, both of us, I think, right, Dr. K? And you can see.
Yeah, it's a good name. Definitely.
You can see on the weekly chart, it's built a big cup with handle, and you could see last week, even though it did this little flip out here, it held the 50-day line. But you can see on the pullback, it's getting supporting action because it's closing the upper part of the range and above the 10-week line on the weekly chart here. and holding up here in closing. I'm going to say we're a little below mid bar, but it's holding in tight in there as the volume's drawing up. Then you get the flip out here on lighter volume. It's actually on below average volume. Then you pick up here, and now you're breaking out. So this stock looks like it's going higher. The National Transportation Safety Board the other day started talking about they would like to see auto manufacturers make these systems that Mobileye makes standard equipment on new cars. So that's a positive. I think the company also reiterated guidance for 2015. So there's really no surprises there. In the offing, maybe what you'll have is an upside surprise. So I think that sets up that. Anyways, some other names. Cyber came out with their pricing of their 4.9 million share secondary offering. The stock was trading down in pre-open trade below 62. I thought it was actually viable there because then you can use the either the 65-day exponential or the lows of this base as a selling guide if you wanted to step in. But the shares don't get released until, I believe, Monday. But I would just watch what the stock is doing, and it's trying to hang in there. This is looking like a failed breakout. But I think just watch how this is acting. It's possible you could take a little position here. I've got like a 10% position myself, so nothing really major, and I'm up just a little bit on it because I bought it pre-open. But interesting though that they price a thing and then they're not going to release the shares until Monday. It seems a little odd, but I don't know. I think if I got any shares, I might have this morning when it was up around 63, 64, I might have arbed it and shorted the stock with the idea that you could cover with your own shares, I suppose. I don't know. Anyways, somebody asked, Dr. K, what is your definition of a climax top? I don't know. I wouldn't get hung up on definitions, but what's your definition of a climax top, Dr. K? When the moon is in... go ahead.
Yeah, it's proprietary work I did back at O'Neill, and it's certainly something that I keep to myself, but it's I see it when I see it. It's very rare to see it, but it basically, the stock needs to really make a massive move relative to its prior price run in a fairly short amount of time. Like we're talking 8 days or less. And then it's a very telltale sign. It's almost a fingerprint when it does happen, because then you can go ahead and short that kind of pattern with a very high probability of success.
Yeah, and I think
it's a very rare kind of market environment to see climax tops. This QE environment, they're almost non-existent. I mean, they fit the 1980s and 1990s markets very well, as part of 2003. But yeah, we haven't really had one of those types of uptrends in years. So yeah, it's the definition still stands, I suppose. Should markets get back to I mean, the markets will inevitably have some sort of good, strong, forceful trend, but not perhaps in this kind of QE environment, because we just, the last time we saw any kind of meaningful, strong uptrends in the market was 2006. So that's almost 10 years ago.
So I think you might say this is getting climaxy on an intermediate term basis or short term basis, so it's probably likely to come in. So I tend to look at it less in terms of an ultimate climax top and more in terms of the short term action. So that's a pretty good move if you bought the stock down in here when it was quiet. I think there's even a pocket pivot in here, right? Yeah. And so you could always take some profits and then look to buy back on a pocket pivot off the 10-day or sell half or whatever. But it is climaxy at the very least. But whether you want to, a lot of people want to make everything black and white because that's the only thing they know how to operate by, and they don't really understand that the markets always have an element of uncertainty in them. Go ahead, Dr. K, you were going to say?
Yeah, you have like I said, AMBA is some sort of potential intermediate climax top. My strict definition, though, applies to the ultimate climax top. I was trying to identify stocks that have made huge runs, and now they're done. They are absolutely done. And you get a lot of volatility in that kind of situation, which can end up for quick profits on the short side when you are actually spotting that kind of situation. But I wouldn't go looking for it in this environment. As I said, it's very, very rare. that kind of first of all, you need a stock that's had a huge move over a certain span of time. Think Ascend in 1995, one of those types of names.
Qualcomm in 2000.
Massive.
Schwab in 98,
Yeah.
well in 98, or I'm sorry, 99, early 99. Yeah, I mean, you can go back to 2000, in March of 2000, you see a ton of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite that late '90s I think had the largest number we've seen, but there's also things like Amgen in the early '90s, and you can go back to the '60s and see certain names that just were clearly evident of massive climactic moves, and that was it. That was the end of the run, and so yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon that repeats itself, but the market environment has to be right for it.
Yeah, so suffice it to say, if Dr. K thinks this is a climax top, or when it goes into a climax top, or any other stock for that matter, you'll hear about it from him. Somebody's asking you, Dr. K, do you consider the Chinese market a climax top? This doesn't really look anything like a climax top. To me, this is sort of a climaxy move, but it doesn't look anything like a climax top. Your take, Dr. K?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, it's a sign of strength of the fact that they keep easing their interest rates by printing more money. That's all it is. I mean, that's a little blip on the chart. Real climax tops. Go back to Qualcomm in '99. That kind of pattern where it's had a huge rate of ascent over a period of months, if not longer, and then over a period of days, it just goes on an absolute tear. And it's interesting to see that phenomenon repeat over and over again. I mean, like I said, you could go back to the 1920s, the Roaring '20s, and see climax top patterns there as well. And so, as they say, human nature doesn't change, and the patterns are reflective of that.
Yeah, this is Qualcomm back in 2000. I've got it here on my HGS Investor. It's a nice thing. You can scroll back on this real easily and scroll forward to look at certain different periods of time, as opposed to MarketSmith where you type. I don't even think MarketSmith allows that, but I know on Wanda you have to type in a date, and then it's kind of static at that point unless you want to change the date. But here you can actually scroll back and forth, which is great for replaying things, on one day-by-day basis, like, to see, okay, here it is. Was this a climax top, And maybe this is what Ambarella is doing right now. So this thing comes out of space, and then it sets up again, and it goes again. So this turned out to be the climax top, and even though a lot of people might think this was the climax top, but it was actually short-term climactic, and you could have bought again off the 10-day moving average. You see that? So, that may be the same situation with Ambarella. Let's see, getting back to other stuff. MS not as flexible as HGSI. Not really. So, although I'm getting close to canceling my Wanda and just taking that just for the data or whatever. So, but I don't really use it that much. I use HGSI most of the time, and I think I've noticed that it picks up stocks that MarketSmith doesn't. So, in fact, I'll give you guys some weird stuff to look at. We're talking about USO. Okay, so getting back to oil. Oil is trying to make a bottom here. You see how it's made this double bottom, and now it's kind of basing. I think it's probably going higher. So what that makes me do is start to look at the oils, and I think fracking is still happening. Silica is kind of interesting. It may be trying to round out a little base here. I actually bought a little bit of this. You had a 5-day pocket pivot in here yesterday, and it's slightly pulling in. So I will see if this works, but I'm just testing the waters here to get a feel for it to see if some of these oils are trying to turn. You see EOG, that's not looking so good. Bang. This is trying. You look at this one here, actually. This is one of the better names, Diamondback, because you're in a big cup with handle. You're sitting in here real nice and tight. I think, let's see, this would have been, this, I think this just missed being a pocket pivot, but you have clusters of 5-day pocket pivots in here. Here, I think here and here. Let's actually take a look at it over here. Fang. I think it's got one of the best symbols out there. Yeah, you can see that you're getting some pocket pivots down here, and the stock's back above the 50-day moving average. But notice that's one of the better acting oils. So I think if oils, you see oils turn, you may see some of these break out. I'm going to check a couple of others. BCI is still a doggy, so that's not really what I'm into. Throw some names at me, you guys. You got any oils that you like to watch? What am I doing? XOM. Let's take a look at this. They're pretty down and dirty, but you're starting to see some, like Fang looks like it might be setting up. Silica Holdings, U.S. Silica Holdings still holding up in here in this little sort of base. We'll see if it tries to come out of there. But I'm watching these, and with the oil prices rising, might be in position to do something. So anyways, somebody's saying maybe you want to jump in on this one. BDSI looking like a failed break. Hang on a second. I'm just going to answer this question. Looking like a failed. Well, it hasn't really broken out yet. But again, it's the place to buy was down here. You had pocket pivots. I think we put out reports on them like here, and probably somewhere in here, and they're going higher. Somebody's asking a question, Dr. K. Okay, the market can do anything at any time. Well, I'm glad you understand that. But for quite a while, a couple of months, I've seen much more stocks down on volume than up on volume on MarketSmith. Today, 37 up, 130 down. Looks like big money selling on the way up. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, this is a market where institutions are not stepping up, and I think a number of them are taking profits, and that's reflective in the down volume, the amount of down volume you're seeing in some of these names. A lot of these names that look great on the charts, they don't go anywhere. They go maybe for a few days, and then that's it. That's why it's imperative to take your profits, and you have them. So stock that gives you 8 to 12% gain, over a period of days from where you bought it, there's nothing wrong with taking those kind of profits, because I think institutions will, you see it on the charts, institutions will step in and whack the stock, and then that's it. That's all she wrote. So instead of seeing your 10% profit shrink to nothing, at least take some of it. And again, this is not a normal market environment that we've seen prior. This is QE-driven environment, and the market seems very reluctant to go higher. And major names, leading names, often are they do their thing for a little while and give you that profit, and then that's it. They fizzle out. You do get the occasional rarity like SKX, which is not doing anything wrong in the pattern. When it does seem, it almost seems like it's getting ahead of itself, and then it gets tight and constructive. So some of you may have held it all the way from the time we recommended this stock many weeks ago. And if you did take profits in it, it's partial profits. There's nothing wrong with that either, because it's just that kind of a market environment.
Yeah, getting back to this comment about someone's asking, says that they've seen many more.
I can't hear you, Gil.
Someone's asking though they've seen many more stocks down on volume than up on volume on MarketSmith. Today, for example, they're saying 37 up, 130 down. Looks like big money selling on the way up. My response would be, why bother with that kind of garbage? You want to create some sort of macro view as to what's going on in the market. When you can see what's going on in the market, if you just look at an index chart, which to me seems like basic common sense, you just got a choppy range. So some days you got more stock coming down on volume, some days you have more up on volume, but it seems to rotate around, and you can see that. And the point that Dr. K has been making, and I've been making for the last several weeks, if not months, is that when you have stocks with big moves, 10, 15, 20, 30% if you get them, you sell into them because the market's rotational. And I don't think you really get back to where MarketSmith is going to be telling you that there's 200 stocks up and 10 down, and that means you need to pile into the market. By that time, it's probably going to be a little bit on the late side. So you really have to be a little more forward-thinking rather than trying to come up with some macro view and then just like some sheep. What's the singular of sheep? Is just a sheep, right? Yeah, it is. Okay. Like some sheep or lemming who needs somebody to give you a big green light that everything's okay. We already know the market's choppy, and you see a lot of weird things. One of the main things that I've talked to guys, like I know one guy, he's been bearish on the market for the last 2 years, and he has a million reasons why, and I understand that. But, you look like a tranny index. That's been ugly for a while. In fact, the last 3 months, you go further back, the peak was back in December, and it's been coming down, November actually. And everybody's been citing this all the way as a reason for the market to suddenly come unhinged because you're seeing the trannies come off. I would say that the whole Dow theory, or whatever this relates to in terms of market timing theories or whatever, I think the trannies are, yeah, they're an important part of the economy, but you know that a lot of the economy has shifted more towards shall we say, the cyber side, and you can chime in if you got anything to say about this, Dr. K. And so the industrials, the trannies, they're less relevant. And so, and I think in this kind of market, all this does is tell you that, and of course, a lot of this is the airlines getting crushed, and the rails have been coming down, and some truckers have been coming down. So that's what brings this down. But does that really mean that other areas of the economy are all faltering together? Back in the old days when the economy was relatively narrow and you didn't have the tech boom, which has really expanded the economy on a number of fronts in terms of new industries and new ways to make money in the economy, including things like e-commerce, I don't think it's so relevant. So, you want to start getting into all this BS, go ahead, but you're wasting your time. That's all I have to say. And Market Smith ain't going to help you find anything. Okay, but let's look at this market now. What do you got? You got some resistance at the highs. S&P is back above the 50-day. The Russell 2000 yesterday, very vigorous move back above the 50-day. To me, this looks like you may be setting up to go higher. So I don't really care how many stocks are up or down on volume or whatever, or new highs versus new lows. I've heard that one too. I think you're in a position where you could break out. And I tend to think that if the Fed would just go ahead and raise rates 25 basis points, and if the Eurozone would boot Greece out like they should, you might actually see things rally. So that's my take, on where we could be headed right now. And I'm not really bogged down in measuring the number of new highs versus new lows versus what the trannies are doing. And whether you have more stocks up on volume, more stocks down on volume. I would say if I run my screen today, so for example, I'll run a screen, here we go, all securities, and I'll run this filter. So I really don't know what you're talking about, but like I said, you're using Market Smith. This is what I'm looking at that's up on volume today, and that's a pretty good list. So I've actually got 78 securities up, so that's a lot more than what Market Smith is looking at, I suppose. And then let's take a look at, if we do all securities, let's look at another filter. Price down. There's really not, I don't see that much going down. So, at least not among the good stocks. If they're garbage stocks, they're garbage to begin with. So, I don't really see it on HGSI. But, I think Mark Smith's kind of a dated tool, and it's built entirely around one particular way of looking at the market, known as CanSlim, which I don't really use anymore, to tell you the truth. I think from the perspective of the Livermore and Wyckoff and the way O'Neill also built on that sort of thinking philosophy about the market, that's kind of where I'm at, and less being indoctrinated into a system known as CanSlim, which worked really well during the post-World War II secular growth period, I think. But things have changed, and I think you have to be a little more intelligent about what you're looking at, and less sheep-like, shall I say. Let's see. Okay, let's go back to the oils. Some people are throwing some names at me. So let's look at, well, you know what? Let's look at them on this. Rig. Not really doing much here. So that's kind of hanging out. I think if you saw a turn, like I said, look at the FANG. That looks okay. Silica might be trying to turn. This is maybe trying to turn as well. Let's see what it looks like. Kind of look at how ugly that is. But these things, you could see them come back up. It wouldn't be the first time you've seen them do that. See here, that happened last time. And then it makes new highs, and everybody wants to come into them, and that's when it tops and rolls over. So you can see the rotation in and out of oils, and maybe you're going to see a rotation back in. So that's why I'm going to start hunting for ugly duckling type setups on some of these stocks where I see them. And I'm starting to see a couple, whereas I wasn't a couple 3 weeks ago, I wasn't seeing any. So it's telling me something may be shifting, and I want to be attuned to that. So Anyways, other oils. Let's go. SDRI. I don't know. It's telling me it doesn't like it. Try that again. Nope. How about PXD? But I think if you're using this or any other software that allows you to look at groups, look at the oils and line them up by, you could, on HESI, line them up by ERG and, see what's happening that way. So anyways, I want to get to some other names real quick. Push these out of the way. And let's look at JD. JD, I think, is the preferred name over BABA. I don't know what's wrong with BABA. I'm kind of pissed at the stock because I thought I could lay into it right here at the 20-day, and they smacked me out pretty quickly. But it could be trying to set up. Maybe it just needs more time. The way you see it on the weekly here is a pullback after running straight up off the low. So maybe it needs some time to set up along here. Meanwhile, I think JD is a more favored name, and you throw in some other e-commerce names out of China. Whoops, no. I think my index finger. Wuba's not hanging in there, so JD still wins. How about this one? China, what is this one? China Mobile Games. Is that a viable gap up, Dr. K? Are you all over that?
Not particularly yet.
No, not today. It's a thin stock.
Yeah, I mean that's one of those bottom feeder stocks. I mean it's just been sagging along. I would also be be careful about what you read into these earnings and sales when it's a Chinese company. They are highly suspect. But yeah, this pattern to me is failure prone because, well, not just because it's one of these bottom feeding stocks, but it also carries greater risk because it is a Chinese stock.
Well, it is trying to turn, so it'll probably be at 30 next week. So because everybody will run into it. I don't know. That's one if you like it. I've seen Mobileye hitting $50 now. It's kind of been like intraday resistance on the stock. Let's see. Any other exciting oils? Best oils. Okay, that's what I like to see. Yeah, make you guys do the work for me. COG, that's looking good. It's in this big ugly base. Maybe it's setting up to go higher. CPE. Another one, yeah. Kellen Petroleum. So but you see how these things work? They get these big ugly cups, and then they come out, and they make marginal new highs, and they roll over again. So it seems like the money is back and forth, and you may see it come back in. If you get a rise in oil prices, I think there's a high probability that you will see money coming into oils. PDC, yeah, there's another one. So I was looking at a bunch of these last night, and I saw several, but I couldn't remember them. This is one of them. This one's hanging in there pretty well, trying to come out. But a lot of them look like this. Probably the Fang I thought looked the best. So if anybody finds one that looks better than Fang, let me know. Maybe this Matador is another one. Yeah, that looks pretty good too. And you're actually already near highs. So these, I'll give Matador and Fang the Gilmo seal of approval here. Let's see. STO. CVX. What is CVX? Chevron? No good. BP, British Petroleum. Kind of. Yeah, that's trying to turn. But a lot of these, I would go with the stronger ones that it seemed to be setting up better. COP. ConocoPhillips. These are the big oils. I think you'd have to go with some of the, I think Matador and Fang, those are more fracking oriented. I think fracking is still happening. Somebody says each stock has its own volume pattern, and that is what we need to analyze. That's right. You're learning, Gar. I like that. CRM, it's just going nowhere. But it's in a very tight base. Very tight closes on a weekly basis, so it looks like it may want to go higher. I think the thing is to buy it down along the lows if you want it, But I'd rather own Mobileye right now. I think that has a lot of potential. SDRI, somebody already mentioned that. Oh, Seadrill, SDRL. That's trying. That doesn't look that good. It's trying to turn, but you see them all. They look like the price of oil. Some of these. I want the ones that look better than the price of oil. CMGE is being bought. Okay, well that explains that. Box, BGU. I was looking at that this morning. It's trading at the lows of the day. I don't know. What do you think of this one, Dr. K? You like Box? They make don't they make Dropbox?
Let me just see this one here. Oh yeah, it's a cloud-based platform for. Yeah, I would imagine that they are the makers of Dropbox. I don't know much about this company, but again, it hasn't been on my radar because it hasn't really done anything appropriate. But it
Right.
looks like their earnings reacted well to its earnings report, and you know, their earnings are still negative, and I don't know. It's a very high risk stock, and it's a bit thin.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
my
it's
thinking.
not something. A bit too much risk.
All right, let's go down. Some other names. Tesla. Tesla's hanging along the 10-day. You had a pocket pivot the other day. This thing's continued to move higher. I liked it here. I liked it in here, and I kind of like it in here. I own a little bit of it right now, maybe about 20% position, I think. I'll have to check that. But just a little in here along the 10-day. Back in it. I was playing it on the way up here, but I think this could go higher. I know Elon Musk was out the other day bragging that they're going to produce 50% growth in deliveries and sales. I guess you combine the two together, I suppose, but not sure how that works. But you can see the stock is holding in pretty tight. It's kind of edging higher. I wouldn't really say it's wedging per se, although it is light volume. But nobody wants to sell it, and everybody short it, and everybody loves to hate it again, which is what I like to see when everybody hates a stock again after being, when the thing was doing this, everybody was in love with it here. Now everybody hates it here, and as it goes up, everybody wants to short it, and it just keeps pushing higher. And I wouldn't be surprised if it went higher, if the market goes higher. If we see the market bust out of this range, which I think is a reasonable possibility at some point, we could get going. Somebody says CFO just resigned. Yeah, we know that, but what does that mean? That doesn't seem to be having much effect on the company right now, at least the stock right now. So I'm not really going to pay attention to that. Okay, thank you. Box is public, Dropbox not yet. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Box is not Dropbox. I think it's, what is it? Is it cloud storage or some sort of, let me check this real quick. It is a cloud-based platform to manage content and collaborate internally and externally. Okay, sounds like that sort of thing. Yeah, that's kind of junk. MW, what is MW? Men's Warehouse. There's a gap move coming out of this. If you want to treat it as a viable gap up, you can. So I would think so. Let's see. F5.
It is lower quality. Keep in mind, it's not something we would put on the list just because the fundamentals aren't there. And if you look at the technical price history of this one, it tends to stagger around a lot.
Yeah. F5. This is trying to come out. It's in a cup with handle and a little boxy, big gap down here, but it's been able to kind of close that gap. Here's I consider this the high of the falling window, and it's above that. And you get a pocket pivot, I think, right here, and it's trying to come out. But the networkers have been doing pretty well overall. You've been seeing Sienna running higher, Juniper is running higher, Finisar is trying to break out again. So, this area is looking strong again. Arista Networks also is trying to turn off the lows of this ugly-looking base. I'm keeping an eye on this. I'd like to see it come in and set up in here. But you're seeing the whole network group starting to look pretty good. So, let's see here. Amazon, someone's asking about. Amazon's pretty funky. Whoops, wrong. Don't want it on that chart. Let's get over here. It's just punching back and forth in this range. So I guess it was viable along the lows of the range the other day if you wanted to step in. It's kind of in midair. I was hoping it would get to the 50-day, and that's where I'd really lay into it, but it didn't happen. But it's trying to move back to the upside. It's acting okay. NetEase, I think have we put out pocket pivot alerts on this one? You had a viable gap up here. Do we put an alert out on that, Dr. K? I forget.
I don't think we did.
Okay. Well, it's gone higher. So LinkedIn, it looks to me like it's either forming a right shoulder. If this is going to turn into a head and
Yeah,
shoulder.
no, we did. We actually, sorry, we actually did
Yeah,
on May
okay.
14th. We did, it was a Bible gap
Yeah,
up.
so it's just
So.
continuing higher. I don't
And a
know.
pocket pivot, by the way, it was a pocket pivot the day before. So anyone who bought on the 13th had a nice quick profit the next day.
Yeah, and then you had a pocket pivot, I think, right here again. Is that right? Yeah, on this day. So, it's moving higher. I think the best time to buy was along the 10 or 20 day. Other names I wanted to look at. LinkedIn, like I said, maybe, is this a head and shoulders or is it going to try and come around? It's at the 10-week line now, and you got this black cross. So I'm trying to decide whether it's going to go higher. I was actually traded this thing from the 200 level up here over like 3 days. And then I've been testing it on the short side up here, but it doesn't seem to want to give way just yet. So kind of it's kind of between no man's land. Maybe it is a short right here at the 10-week line, or maybe it goes up to the 50-day. Excuse me. VMW, I was looking at that. That hit my screens last night. This is a stock that shows up on HGSI last night, and you had a pocket pivot. It's trying to come around, so I don't know. If you want to try and buy it, you could. It may run. So you're seeing a good point on Amazon. You know what? I wasn't watching. Somebody says it hit the 10-week line. You're right. I should have been watching that. I missed that. Well, whatever. I'm heavy into Mobileye, so as long as that keeps going, I'm happy. Amazon's only up 0.96% today, anyways. So Mobileye's up 4.5%. So Mobileye wins. Let's see. But yeah, I missed that, and I think it's probably a good time to point that out. When you're watching for support levels, watch the daily and the weekly chart. So I didn't bother to look at that, and maybe I missed a good buy spot if I wanted to buy the stock. You're up 14 points from there, so that's pretty good. Let's see. Other names I'm watching, Shake Shack. Pulling in, volume's been drying up. Maybe this is where it's going to turn and have another run like this and go to 150, right? I don't know. Maybe this short-term climax sort of move, and I think it probably needs more time, but maybe one to keep an eye on. JD is trying to push higher. That was probably viable. I've been liking this stock along the 10-day and the 20-day, and it finally popped and hangs out. Now it's trying to move higher. This one looks good. Twitter, okay, I look at this, and you could say you got a head and shoulders, but this might, everybody hates the stock right now, and I'm wondering if it's going to turn and rally up to the 50-day. So I'm not so sure I'd necessarily want to short it here because you're breaking out on this bear flag breakup, but there's no volume. Generally, you'll see some volume, so I'm not really quite sure what to make of this, to tell you the truth. And it wouldn't surprise me if it turns higher, so first, before going lower, and maybe somebody buys them out. I don't know. Facebook had a pocket pivot yesterday, but with Facebook, what you do is you buy whenever it looks like garbage, and then you short it when it looks really good. So this morning, after the pocket pivot's going higher, you could short it and then cover it and pick off a couple of bucks. Facebook just, I consider it like a barometer stock, and it is really because it's doing the same thing that the market's doing. It's just chopping sideways, just like the market, for a long period of time. Apple's another one that's doing similar sort of thing, and it's been going sideways for most of the year and chopping around. Maybe it's a short right here. It's going to head back down through the 50-day. You have a violation of the 50-day here, but it doesn't keep going. But it's just chopping back and forth. Is it going higher? I don't know. I think it's a lot like Facebook in that it's just kind of mirroring the market, and maybe it breaks out and goes higher, and maybe Facebook does the same thing if the market is able to break out to new highs. So, I mean, the market's really in flux, and it's not easy. And I'll have periods of success and periods where I'm just getting pushed around. And from my perspective, I'll swing around in a 10% up, 10% down band, so a 20% band back and forth. And if I'm up 10, 15% for the year, to me, that's just like being flat. And I'm really just flat for the year as far as I see it. And I'm really waiting, to be up over 100%, you really have to be able to sink your teeth into something that's a little more coherent, where you're not constantly running, looking back over your shoulder, wondering if you're gonna get run down by a train coming. So it's a tough environment. So. And I would say, to be honest, it's given me a rough time too. But I'm not down and out because of it. It's just tough, and that's okay. I remember 99 was tough all year long, and you know, the last couple of months made like 970% in 2 months, less than, I think, about 9 weeks probably. So, you know, the opportunity of a lifetime will come at any moment, and probably when you least expect it. So, so it's tough. And anybody who's doing 30, 40%, 50% year to day, I salute you, because I think you're doing a great job. But you really have to be on it, or you just load it into Umbrella and Palo Alto Networks and sat tight. So that's another possibility. But that sort of stuff is usually best done in hindsight. But occasionally I've seen it happen. So Citrix, is that a viable gap up, Dr. K? Are you into that? They make the product that we're using right now, GoToWebinar. Am I right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the Dropbox one? Okay, good.
Yeah, no, that is correct. But no, this stock has not interested me in a long time, and you take a look at the weekly, and you'll see why. It has a lot of false signals, you know. And if you look at the fundamentals, they're completely anemic. So I'm not interested in this one.
Yeah, me neither, really. And we use their products, but I don't know how much. There's a lot of other products out there too. FLTX, ugly dot. You know, I like this here. You get a pocket pivot here, I think. Maybe not. No, I don't think so. Maybe it's trying.
No,
to
not quite.
I don't. I mean, if you want to try and buy it on the 50-day on the ugly duckling theory, then I suppose you could. You could use low here, the 10-day or the 20-day as a stop if you really like it. So another one that's like that I kind of look at as maybe wanting to fool shorts is Acorn, which looks like it just looks butt ugly. I mean, it doesn't get much uglier than that. Two big gap down. Stock's up at the lows of this falling window, and I just wonder if this thing's going to try and turn here and screw up everybody, because it looks like a textbook head and shoulders, sort of. In fact, a very ugly textbook head and shoulders. But these two big volume spikes here where people sold the stock. The other aspect here is that it's possible that it's short-term sold out, so it's going to make another run at the highs just to screw up everybody who thinks this is a textbook head and shoulders. And that can happen. I've seen it. Let's see, cruising through here. Advanced decline line is negative on the NASDAQ and slightly positive on the S&P, but the NASDAQ's only up 3. It had a big day yesterday. And again, you're up at the highs, so you're pausing, which makes sense. I'm more interested to see what happens over the next few days if we hang, and then you got the Fed meeting, and maybe that sends everything jamming to the upside. That's something I'm just keeping an eye out for. So, FireEye is just way extended, nothing there. Fortinet is a little less extended, but I think you got to buy it coming into the 10-day. Here's a pocket pivot 5 days ago, and you know, you had to buy the pullback here, not the strength. Intrexon's been a great name. It had a pocket pivot here when it stalled, and then another one here, and right here actually, this stalled, and then right here, another one here, and it's trying to continue higher. And this has had a decent move. It's trying to build a base. So that may be setting up. I think, you know, coming into the 10-day is probably your best shot, just like it was down here. Let's see, GoDaddy. GoDaddy's rocking. You had to buy it down here around 26 when it was quiet. You know, well, I don't know how quiet that is. It seems to swing around like a buck. But it's a thinner stock, so you may have a smaller position, and it's working so far. So there it is, IPO U-turn. There it goes. Let's see, GPro. Getting kicked around, you know, another example as to why you want to take profits in stocks when you have big gains. If you bought this thing anytime in here, I know we liked it in here along the 20-day. It filled this gap and turned and went higher. I liked it here. And then it runs up. And, of course, I got a number of emails, even a couple of tweets, too, from people wanting to know, you know, they want to buy GoPro up here now. But I'd look at it and say, well, you know, where were you down in here or down in here? Now you want to buy it and initiate a position here. I think if you wanted to add, you could have. But I still think, given the move that you've had off the lows, and even the move you've had over the last, say, month or so, a little more than that, that's a pretty steep move. So the idea that it's just going to continue launching higher, and you're going to buy any little pullback or any little bit of quiet action, it seems kind of silly. So it looks like everything's going into frozen mode here. Can you hear me, Dr. K?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
just fine.
Yeah, my whole screen is freezing up. There we go. Um, I think it's an internet issue. So this computer actually runs on a Cat5, running down the wall to the router downstairs, and I'm wondering if there's an issue there because I know my Wi-Fi systems never do that. Anyways, Palo Alto Networks is hanging in there along the 10-day, but again, you don't want to be buying this. It's not really set up. Data is acting pretty well. It's just continued to edge higher, but like Fortinet, very similar look after a Bible gap up here. You want to buy it on the pullbacks into the 10 or the 20-day moving average. And remember, on my charts, this green line is the 20-day, and it's an exponential moving average. It is not a simple moving average, and they can look quite a bit different actually for stocks that are moving sharply. And there's a reason why I do that, because I want it to adjust for that. So if you look at, if you put a simple moving average on LinkedIn, it actually was hitting it down here. And that wasn't really a good reference point. So this is sort of counteracting this really steep action here that can kind of skew it short term. Anyways, where are we? QRVO, Jose is got a nice pocket pivot there. Probably want to buy it on weakness better than strength. Taser was real quiet along the 10-day and the 20-day, bouncing along this breakout area here, and it's turned. It's looking pretty good. NXPI is failing on a breakout. I consider this the base breakout, so it is actually failing on the breakout, even though you wanted to buy it here. But notice you get a nice 10% move, a little more, 12, 13, and you could sell into that, and it comes right in. Another one that's doing something similar is Skyworks, but this is having a little more vigorous bounce, so it's trying to retake the breakout. This would be the breakout here. Buying it along the 10-day when it was quiet. I think there are even some pocket pivots in here that we pointed out, like this one. And you know, again, you get about a 10% move, a little more than that, 13, 14 maybe, and they whack it. You could have stepped in and held your nose and closed your eyes and bought some right here, and you would be doing okay. What do you think of GWPH? Well, it's just pulling back into the 20-day. I think if you wanted to buy it, it's probably down in here, or when it's tight along the 10-day. So now you want to buy it on the pullback. I guess you could do it, but you know, you got your stop right there at the 20-day exponential. So that may be okay. Let's see. Nice IPO U-turn in Shop a couple of days ago. What is Shop? Why doesn't that hit my screen? Oh, it's way too thin. 246,000 shares. It traded. It's like GoDaddy. It's trying to turn. Little quick. So come up at the top. I wouldn't be surprised to see it pull back. But it's trying to turn. Shopify, huh? Let's see. How much money are they losing? Only 6 cents. Sales up 99%. It's a little tiny. Yeah, I mean, it's a little tiny suck. I think I like the GoDaddy better because it's a bigger name. But Shopify is working so far, but that's not a bad little U-turn there. You can see Cyber coming back above 63, so it's trying to hold the 50-day. I noticed Silica started going higher. Now it's pulled back. It's down 14 cents. Let's see, what else? Any other questions? Let me go to some more names here. Well, how about some of the biotechs? Blue pulling into the 20-day. This thing's had a big move. I think AMAG is an interesting name, but it had a pocket pivot here and no real follow-through. Probably needs to come in maybe a little further down at the 20-day or just underneath and test this low. The Retrofin has acted pretty well, and since the Bible gap up we pointed out here, and you had this really hairy pullback. To me, that seems normal for a thinner biotech name. It trades 400,000 shares a day. Zyop has been trying to have some pocket pivots, but it's failing. So Eyes is pulling in. This may be setting up. If you look at it on the weekly chart, it's hanging in pretty tight here. Biogen moving back above, not a short. So let's see. I think I've covered everything I like. Oh, GoGo is another name. That might be viable. It's trying to come up and around. Tried to break out here the other day last week and failed. So what's on your short list? Not much, actually. There's not a lot. Save has worked pretty well as a short. But you'll notice anything that I want to short, it doesn't. You get a little break and then it rallies or turns around altogether. And so I haven't really found anything that's working all that wonderfully on the short side, which I think tells you something about the market. Even though it's been this choppy range, the things that have worked on the short side have not been uh, that plentiful. So that sort of tells you which way you want to lean. And so every time I've tried to short something, I tried to short Facebook yesterday, thinking it was going to roll over, as it comes up into the 50-day yesterday. And I got really short this thing and thought it would roll over, and it just kind of pushed up in my face and forced me to cover. Kihu, I don't know. Why do I sense that you're late on this one? Oh, it's a buy. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. You got a big pocket pivot there. It's trying to turn off the bottom. Maybe it's going to go higher. No, probably not a short though. Baba, we already looked at. Is Baba a short? Who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe it's going to roll over. Something's not right here. That's all I know. You had these nice moves that could not hold, and just kind of breaking down. Now you're coming back into the 50-day, and it looks kind of like garbage. So, what time is it? 10:01. Anything else, Dr. Cam? Ready to wrap up? Any final questions before we?
Yeah.
Nope, nothing. Anyways, so there you have it. I think it's just a matter of looking around and picking your spots if you want to get long and trying to buy on weakness. It's pretty much the same old market, but with the Fed meeting coming up next week, I would be watching for some sort of catalyst for a breakout through this range. Because I think at worst, they raise rates a quarter point. And I tend to think that if they did, the market would view that positively. At best, they do nothing, and the market may say, okay, great, so just keep on cruising. I personally would like to see them raise rates a quarter point. I think the market would actually key on that and go higher. So we'll see what happens. Meeting is what day, Dr. K? Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday, right?
Is this one of the 2D meetings, and it's Wednesday?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so we'll find out. Anyways, a couple other names just real quick. UA is interesting here. It declined. You had a little bottom fishing pocket pivot here, and it's holding tight. Ulta is another one that's hanging in there, but nothing happening yet. But I did notice UA looks kind of interesting. I wonder if it'll turn and go higher. Stock's had a big move. Well, it had a big move here, so it was sort of entitled from here to here. So it's sort of entitled to this pullback, and now you get this bottom fishing gap up pocket pivot. That might be okay. Shorted Urban at 200-day. Yeah, you're getting a little bit of downside from 36.95 to 35.22. I mean, I guess brag about it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Because Urban was never really, I don't think, never really been a big winner. It tried to make a marginal high here, and then it failed. So I don't know, but I just find from my own experience that the short side really isn't all that ripe here. And outside of the airlines hitting, say, save for a few bucks, you haven't seen anything major on the short side. And that may be telling you something about the market. So anyways, you guys, thanks for showing up, as always, and we'll catch you next week. Take care.
So long, everyone.